HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The View from My Foxhole, a Marine private's first-hand World War II combat experience from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, by William Swanson. Read by Michael Butler Murray. Note from the publisher. This book is a memoir. It reflects the author's recollections of experiences that occurred decades prior. Some language may be offensive to some listeners, including the term Jap, which the author uses to refer to the enemy and not as a racial or ethnic slur. In fact, prior to World War II, the term was not considered offensive. It was only after the war that it was considered a derogatory insult. The author displays respect for the enemy's determination and bravery. Preface. This is the true story of a not-so-casual journey across the Pacific while on a tour of duty in the United States Marine Corps, 1942 to 1945. Although conceding that this is not to be confused with real literature, I hope that in some way I have been able to convey a feeling of what it was to be an ordinary rifleman in that rather hard and sometimes dangerous time. This is not about heroes or of heroic deeds. It is instead about an occasional bit of misery in those bone-weary foot-sloggers who, upon finding themselves in terrible circumstances, and even when wishing to hell they were somewhere else, did what they had to do. Though some stories were sadder and more difficult than mine, some funnier than mine, and many more pleasant than mine, this, to the best of my recollection, is how the thing looked from my particular foxhole. Under certain circumstances, urgent circumstances, desperate circumstances, profanity provides a relief denied even to prayer. Mark Twain, 1835 to 1910. Misery. The damned thing seemed to hit with an utter, almost callous disregard. But fear? I learned soon enough to envy those who had no fear. San Diego. In the beginning, there will be the illusion of excitement and adventure. Turning 18 in 1942 was, for some, just about the right age at just about the right time. Prime time, many would say. The Depression was over, and the war was on as I graduated from high school in June, read about the Marines landing on Guadalcanal on August 7th, and then reached my 18th birthday on August 10th. It has been said that this was the best of times and the worst of times, and that sums it up pretty well. For a rather large number of us prime-timers, this best of times had to do with great excitement, with thoughts of high adventure, and we could hardly wait to get in the damn thing. The worst of times would come later, but we scarcely gave it a thought. Why I chose the Marine Corps I can't really say, except that it probably had to do with their unique esprit de corps, along with a reputation of being first to fight. Then, compounding the thing, I ran into a couple of former China Marines along the way, giving me my first inkling of this once a Marine, always a Marine business, and at the same time, only reinforcing that expectation of high adventure. So it is no doubt a combination of these events and fate that brings me to this particular date and place. A side note to all this is that I wouldn't take $1 million for the memories, the experiences, and the camaraderie, but wouldn't do it again for all the goddamn tea in China. September 17th, 1942. I arrive in Los Angeles for a final physical and signing of papers before being sworn into service in the U.S. Marine Corps. It is a long, drawn-out session, and no doubt pretty routine, but we detect a not-so-subtle change after the official swearing in. Up to this point, we have been asked to do this or that. Now, however, we are told, in no uncertain terms, what to do and when to do it. A sort of major line has been crossed, and nothing will ever be the same. The paperwork is finally finished around 9 or so, and we are then hustled aboard a Greyhound bus for the trip to our new home, the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. Arriving after midnight, the bus stops at a deserted part of the base, which seems odd. I guess we had expected to drive in the main gate, but this isolated location merely sets the stage for our welcome. The driver quickly opens the door, and a loud, gruff voice immediately yells, "Fall out!" Unfortunately for us, we fail to grasp the rather simple import of this new term, and instead fumble around getting our gear together, totally unaware of the wretched turn our lives are about to take. The voice, sounding very impatient now, speaks again, and this time there is no mistaking the message. "Get your goddamn candy asses off this bus and be damned quick about it. You're in the United States Marine Corps now, and when you're given an order, you had better jump, and damned fast." That gets our attention, and we stumble out of the bus as fast as we can, being cursed and berated every step of the way. Can't figure what could have brought on such an awful tirade. We are still blissfully unaware that this is the way it will be for most of the next 2 months, and is just one part of a process which is designed to turn ordinary people into Marines. At this moment, however, we are beginning to wonder if we might not have made a rather serious and, perhaps worst of all, irrevocable mistake. "All right, you dirty, no-good sons of bitches. Form into 3 rows and shut your goddamn mouths." The voice belongs to a man in a khaki uniform, wearing a campaign hat and carrying a swagger stick. A sergeant, we guess. He just stands there looking at us for several minutes, like he is some sort of god, or perhaps higher, and he looks disgusted at what he sees. "Of all the rotten, stinking, low-life bastards I've ever seen, you are undoubtedly the worst. What in the goddamn hell makes you people think you could ever be a pimple on a real Marine's ass? Look at you. Son of a bitch, I can't believe the likes of you actually had the nerve to join the Marine Corps. God help us all if it is up to you miserable bastards to defend this country." This rather unfriendly greeting goes on, until we finally hit bottom and begin to feel that maybe we are the worst he's ever seen. We are all volunteers, although a few joined up to escape being drafted into the Army, and they are, perhaps, sickest of all, feeling that, in hindsight, they should have chosen the frying pan. Even so, after having literally signed our lives away in order to fight for our country, we sort of thought the Marine Corps might look kindly on our sacrifice, and even be a little bit glad to see us. Never in our wildest dreams could we have imagined a reception like this. The sergeant, or the Almighty, whatever the hell he calls himself, finally gets tired of giving us hell, and we are then marched over to a large building. Inside, another surly Marine orders us to turn in all our possessions. He says we are to keep nothing. Going to prison could hardly be worse, and we note that, since our arrival in San Diego, we have yet to hear anything even resembling a kind word. Next, we are led to a large room with many bunks and told to find a sack, this being Marine Corps lingo for a bed, and it comes as no surprise that these sacks have to be made up from scratch. The next bit of good news is that reveille will be at 0500 hours, that we are to be dressed and shaved by 05:15, and we are by now quite sure they mean what they say. Looking back on this, our first day in the Marine Corps, disaster seems to be the word that pops up most often, although there is some disagreement about the term even coming close to describing the day. We turn in wondering what in the goddamn hell we have let ourselves in for. It is a short night. After a few minutes, or so it seems, we are rudely wakened by a horrible, incredible sound. Our wake-up call is a recording of the entire Marine Band playing reveille, and the noise literally blows us out of our sacks. This is the beginning of our stay in boot camp, and as the days go by, we learn what being a Marine is all about. Unfortunately, life doesn't get any better for a while. Sad to say, it actually gets worse. But very slowly, and sometimes reluctantly, we learn that it is easier and a bit more pleasant when we do it their way. During these first days, we are issued dungarees and dress screens for inspections. They apparently do not know what the word liberty means, along with a variety of other gear, including a new Garand rifle. Naturally, this rifle is covered with a heavy coat of cosmoline and is a real bearcat to clean. They apparently do not realize just how miserably hard it is to get the damn stuff off, and seemingly quite the opposite, in fact, expect, and even insist, that the rifle be spotless in short order. There is a momentary thought of trying to convey this information to them, but after considering their response to previous efforts at enlightenment, this is not pursued. Instead, we tackle the job with an unaccustomed gusto, and as time goes by, learn that given the proper incentive, it is possible to do a great variety of miserable and distasteful chores. At this time, and on many future occasions, it is stressed that if you take care of your rifle will take care of you. And they show extreme displeasure when you fail to do this properly. In addition to this rifle, number 338252, a number, along with my serial number that will be etched in my memory forever, and bayonet, we are issued 782 gear and given a bucket of stuff. The term 782 gear is more gyrene lingo and has to do with packs, cartridge belts, canteens, entrenching tools, and the like. The stuff they give us is mostly personal items which the Marine Corps thinks we should have. There is, of course, a reason behind these gifts, and it pretty much has to do with the fact that this place has very few of the amenities normally associated with civilization. Then, adding some small insult to injury, our first payday confirms an ugly rumor that the items in the bucket were not really gifts at all. We are also issued a pair of dog tags to be worn at all times, these being small oval-shaped brass discs, which have our name, serial number, religion, date of last tetanus shot, blood type, and whether regular or reserve, stamped on. They are to be worn around our necks with one in a separate loop, so that in case of an untimely death, that one can be cut or yanked off for records purposes, while the other stays with the body. They do think of everything. Next, we are placed in groups of 60, called platoons, not the same as platoons in a rifle company, which have about 40 men. Each of these platoons stays together for the duration of boot camp, and is led by a sergeant, called a DI, for drill instructor. He is not an officer, but expects to be treated like one, only more so. And there is much unpleasantness for those who fail to recognize that simple fact. The idea is to begin thinking and acting as a team rather than as individuals, and slowly but surely, we get the knack of keeping in step. The days are long, the training rough, and sometimes brutal, and it is becoming increasingly clear that the lot of the riflemen is a hard one. Long lines and waiting are the order of the day. Waiting for chow, waiting to shave, shower, to hit the head, visit the latrine, waiting for a plethora of shots, and dreading the oft-discussed square needle. It was only a rumor, thank God. Waiting for the sergeant to give us hell, and not being disappointed. "You're left. You're left. You had a good home, but you left. I said you're left, goddammit, you're left. Haven't you bastards learned a goddamn thing?" The sergeant curses and rails at our inability to keep in step. Each day, however, we seem to fumble and stumble a little less, though our DI continually complains that we are lagging behind the other platoons and causing him no end of embarrassment. He says that he has never had a platoon fail to get through boot camp, but that we are so god-awful lousy we just might spoil his record. He indicates that the easy days are therefore over, that we are going to have to work longer and harder, including our time off. Jesus Christ, what in the hell easy days is he talking about? And we don't have any goddamn time off. In truth, we are probably about average, and all the platoons are no doubt given the benefit of a similar incentive. Nevertheless, he keeps his promise. We do work harder and longer, and in addition are often roused out at night, our only time off, for such things as calisthenics, or, when he is in an especially foul mood, sea bag inspection. This means we are required to lay our complete issue of gear and clothing out in the company street, all folded and stacked neatly, as well as being in an exact and particular order. Up and on our shoulders, a rather tiring drill with the rifle and a special favorite of our DI, and it continues to be a quite regular nighttime activity. These interruptions are, of course, not happy times, and occur most often after midnight, which just happens to coincide with the closing of the Non-Commissioned Officers Club. Though we speculate on this apparent coincidence among ourselves, it is never mentioned in the sergeant's presence. We have learned something. Then a day when it all comes together. A day when the whole goddamn platoon is in step. To the rear, column right, to the winds, left shoulder arms. We are doing it all. There is a new lilt in our step, an ease in our movements as we execute each command. The merest hint of a smile crosses the sergeant's face. Eventually, but not easily, we get through the first month of this rather nasty metamorphosis and are then transferred to the rifle range at Camp Matthews, where our lives actually begin to get a little better. We are not yet considered Marines, but seemingly have had a small promotion to human being, and we are thankful for any small favors. I particularly enjoy our time on the range, and am fortunate enough to shoot expert, which, in addition to a little prestige, adds $5 to my $50 a month private's pay. We spend 3 weeks at Camp Matthews, and in so doing recoup a bit of our tattered self-image, although the hammer comes down just often enough that we avoid letting this newfound status of human being delude us into thinking we are anything but boots. In the view of actual Marines, we are still bottom of the bottom, although it is a comfort to know that there are now those who are even lower than us. Finally, with rifle training out of the way, we move back to the recruit depot for our last 2 weeks of boot camp, and then graduation. And now, here's one for the books. After all the miserable goddamn hell our DI put us through, we actually took up a collection and gave the son of a bitch a watch. This, however, is only the first of many emotions that I will wonder about as I serve out my hitch in the Corps. And speaking of hitches, did I mention the big fat hog I cut in the ass? An expression picked up from my Tennessee buddies. By signing up for 4 years instead of the war and out, as most did? Best that I not even attempt to explain that one. However, it all somehow fits together, and I doubt there is a better example of a love-hate relationship that exists in the Marine Corps. This so-called graduation completes the first part of a rather amazing transformation. I don't quite know how it is done, but people come into this place and come out transformed. There is a sense of pride instilled over and above the suffering, and even though we have learned to hate the goddamn outfit with a passion, this is somehow pushed aside by the feeling that we are finally one of them. Once a Marine, always a Marine, has its beginning in pain and misery. On the way to our first liberty, we pass a group of new boots and cannot believe that we actually looked like them only 2 months ago. What a ragtag bunch. They'd never make it in the old Corps. We welcome them with the same words we were welcomed with. You'll be sorry. It is a relief getting through boot camp, and although much worse is to come, we are now Marines, at least in our view. With that first liberty over all too soon, including a great trip home for me, most of us report to the new Marine Corps base at Camp Pendleton. Some, like myself, are then assigned to the 9th Marine Regiment, the 9th being one of 3 line regiments making up the 3rd Marine Division. I am further ordered to one of the rifle companies and placed in the 2nd Platoon, which will be my home for the next 2.5 years. Being a new boot, I draw the job of assistant BAR man, which means I carry my own M1 rifle, cartridge belt, and assorted gear, and in addition, get to wear a bandolier containing 12 20-round magazines for the BAR, Browning automatic rifle. This not being a particularly sought-after position, I managed to hold on to it for the next year or so, although I will have more than a passing acquaintance with most every job in the platoon before it's over. November and December are busy months with numerous field problems and much time spent on obstacle courses and endurance runs. However, part of our training necessarily has to do with getting from ship to shore, and I arrive at Pendleton just in time to join the regiment for a 2-week stint aboard ship. Our particular troop transport is the USS Arthur Middleton, and is only the first of many that I will get to know. After boarding, we immediately head below to our troop compartment and encounter, for the first time, that unique combination of stale salt air, fuel oil, cooking, and assorted other odors which give shipboard life its rather distinctive aroma. The aroma is even more distinctive on the lower decks. There is much to learn in this phase of our training, and we soon find that climbing down landing nets with pack and weapons is not only difficult, but often dangerous. Another little fact which we are quickly made aware of is that the only way back on board is by climbing up the damned nets, and that is plain hard work. However, we eventually get the hang of this up and down nets business, and although our many practice landings go reasonably well, I, along with a few others, get well acquainted with the miserable miseries of mal de mer, or seasickness. These good times do not last, however, and our luck finally runs out as plans are being made for a last trip down the nets. The weather has taken a sudden turn for the worse, and this particular landing is to be made under cover of darkness. The best, it seems, is always saved for last. A night landing in decent weather probably wouldn't be too bad, and a stormy landing in daylight might even be tolerable. But going down the nets at night in this storm seems like madness, at least to us. And with old salts getting sick in the pitching and rolling of the ship, the term miserable seems totally inadequate in describing the condition of us landlubbers. We continue to hope the operation will be canceled, or at least postponed until daylight. The Marine Corps, however, has other ideas, and seems determined that we should learn a little of the fine art of suffering. Finally, then, our silent pleas having fallen on deaf ears, the ship's crew gets the word and around midnight begins moving the 20-odd landing craft, Higgins boats, from positions on deck, and in davits into the rather unfriendly ocean. It is not an easy time. As the winches raise them off the deck, the wind sends the boats crashing into the superstructure, or whatever is nearby. In the resultant turmoil, the ship suffers a fair amount of damage. But difficulties notwithstanding, the boats are finally lowered to the water, and we are ordered to report to our assigned debarking station, landing net. Leaving the interior of the ship, we pass through the double set of blackout curtains and are soaked in seconds. That, along with our first look at the black night and the feel of wind and rain, quickly confirms earlier suspicions that this little exercise is going to be a real son of a bitch. And occasional glimpses of the ocean do nothing to dispel this notion. The goddamn swells look huge. Railside, looking down at the dark water, we cannot believe they really mean to send us down in this weather. Maybe they just want to scare us a little. Now the coxswain, having finally maneuvered his boat below our net, no small feat this night, must try to maintain his position against the surging sea. Over the sound of the storm, we can hear that distinctive roar as he guns the engine, moving forward and back, trying to keep on station. Then, as our eyes get more accustomed to the dark, we begin to get some idea of just what it is that we are being asked, the right word is ordered, to do. Our Higgins boat appears to drop 20 feet or so into a sort of trough. Then, as the swells catch it, rises up with the sea and crashes into the side of the ship. This with a horrible grinding noise. This upward movement carries the boat almost to the rail. Then it literally drops out of sight as the sea subsides. It doesn't seem possible that we can get down the ragged-looking net without being crunched between boat and ship, thrown into the stormy ocean, or at the very least, just falling down in the damned boat. If they mean to scare us, they are doing a good job of it. In addition, many of us have, by now, passed beyond seasickness into feeling miserable as hell. Now hear this. The command is almost lost in the wind and rain. Commence debarkation. Dirty son of a bitch. They're really going to do it. We stop worrying about weather and start worrying about how. 2 of the older hands are ordered to go first, and we watch, hoping to learn from them. But they are soon out of sight, and we know little more than before. Once in the boat, their job is to hold the net as taut as possible, pulling down as the boat rises, then letting out slack as it falls. My turn. And it's kind of scary as I put a leg over the rail and try to find a decent foothold. All I can think of is that damned boat smashing into the ship and trying not to be caught in between. The important thing, we are told, is to step off as the boat is rising, and not as it is falling. Sounds easy enough, but with the boat moving so fast, you have to be damned quick. I try to step off near the top of one rise, but am too late, and the boat drops away, leaving me hanging by my hands. Scrambling to secure my feet, I vow to catch the next up movement for sure, and I get lucky on that effort, sort of half falling into the boat. Our platoon finally gets down without serious mishap. The net is thrown over the side, and the coxswain heads into the dark. However, we soon lose sight of the ship, and for the first time, realize just how small and insignificant we are, as our little boat tries to hold its own in the heavy seas. Down in the troughs, the swells seem to tower over us, and we begin to have serious doubts about this thing actually making it to the beach. If we were soaked before, we are now drenched, as the rain continues and seawater sprays over the gunnels and front ramp. One feature of these boats that was discovered early on, and that we are emphatically rediscovering this night, is that, in design, comfort took a decided back seat, if considered at all, and there is no place to sit or room to do so, even if we tried. There is room only to stand, and this, shoulder to shoulder. The damn things, instead of riding over the seas, seem to prefer the troughs and just sort of smash into the waves. Or is it vice versa? Either way, we take a beating. However, and in spite of it all, we somehow manage to rendezvous with the other boats in our group and begin circling. Waiting for further instructions, I am so damn sick by this time that I don't care which end is up, and I have plenty of company. The only thing on my mind is getting out of this damned boat and onto something that doesn't move in 6 directions at once. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of pounding and bouncing, the boats somehow get the word, peel out of their circular pattern into a sort of ragged line, and head for the beach. It is a rough surf, and our boat almost broaches, turns sideways, as we approach the shore. But the ramp finally clanks down, and we struggle through the waves onto somewhat dry land. We still have a long, rough day ahead, as dawn is just breaking. But thank God, the night and that damn boat ride are over. Already it looks like I have chosen a hard and dangerous business, and the real hell of it is, I don't even know the meaning of the words, yet. Returning to Pendleton, we get back into constant, rigorous training, and although the days are hard, evenings usually find us heading for the slop chute and a little relaxation. Slop chute being Marine Corps lingo for the enlisted men's pub, which serves beer and snacks. It isn't much of a place, the camp being still under construction, but it gives us a chance to unwind and complain about the damned officers and our so-called miserable lives. Miserable. Now there is another interesting word, and one whose meaning we are destined to explore in depth. The first part of December sees our regiment on the move again, this time to the Scout and Sniper School at San Onofre. This is a 2-week course that gets down to the real nitty-gritty of infantry fighting and is about as...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?